So, good evening and welcome to another edition of Seaside Chats with the Salve Admit Guy. I'm the Salve Admit Guy, Jim Fowler, Vice President for Enrollment Management at Salve Regina University, found at Salve Admit Guy on Twitter and occasionally Instagram. If you would like to get more information about me or about Salve Regina University or my musings on soccer, pop culture, music, theater, and any other variety of things that I like to tweet about and retweet about. You'll find all my information there. You have joined Seaside Chats in the fall of 2020 for our series on Salve's academic programs. This is an ongoing series, so I encourage, if you're watching live or if you're watching a recorded version, to look at the other programs that we've highlighted and will continue to highlight throughout the fall. We'll also be continuing to push out invitations to other programs throughout the year focused on campus activities, academic life on campus, athletics, all aspects of the Salve Regina University experience. But tonight, we're going to be talking about Salve's renowned social work program. Social work is one of our signature programs at Salve Regina University, really not all that surprising given our Mercy mission, and what sure we'll get into some of that tonight. And joining me this evening, I have two wonderful guests, Dr. Mary Montminy Dana, who is the program chair for the social work program, and Gabby Schmidt, who is a student who has graduated from the program recently, but I believe is also currently pursuing her graduate degree within Salve's graduate curriculum. So welcome to both of you. Thank you both for being here.
Hi. Well, yeah, thank you. Just a little bit of information. So Gabby indeed is one of our alum, but somebody who was hired from her agency right upon graduation. So she's not in graduate studies at this point, but is out there in the field working, which for us is very exciting.
Wonderful. Well, Mary, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, your experiences, what brought you to Salve, and maybe if you have a particular area of focus or a particular research area that you'd like to talk about, that would be great too.
Sure. So I've been at Salve for about 32 years, and this is my third year as the chair of the department, and it's been a lovely, just wonderful to be here, 3+ decades. So I've seen a lot of growth in the department. We've had so many wonderful alum that have gone off to do great things, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that later. But I first came to Salve, actually, I was working at a program on Aquidneck Island, which is for those students who are on here who don't know, we are an island, and I was working in a community not far from here. And actually, somebody who was working in the social work program then contacted me and asked me, would I come in to be a guest speaker for a class? At that point, I was working with in a program that was very much like foster care for teenagers. And so I came in, and boy, did I enjoy the classroom, and I enjoyed the students. And so one thing led to another. I ended up, eventually teaching here. I am a social worker by trade. So I have an MSW, which is a master's degree in social work. I've also have a doctorate in social work, which from Boston College. So I'm very proud of my schools, and my area, as I said, I started out really working with teenagers. My very first job was in Boston, working in juvenile probation. And a lot of social workers are very interested in the intersection of law enforcement and social work. So, and I happen to be one of those people. I spent a lot of years after that working in the field of domestic violence, and working in all phases of that, working with victims and working with children who witness domestic violence, helping to establish support groups, helping to consult with, SAFE programs. So I'm very, very interested in that. More recently, my area of interest is working in women's health. So I'm interested in every aspect of women's health and have developed a program here, or a course here within our program, to talk about women's health specifically. So those are my areas, and maybe Gabby wants to say something about her areas.
Sure, sure. Well, certainly you've given us a lot to chew on over the course of our time together this evening. I really appreciate the fact that as I talk to faculty at Salve through these sessions, one of the themes that keeps coming up is this combination of both a very strong academic background of our faculty, not surprising, but coupled with, in many cases, actual practical field experience working in industry related to their area of academic focus. And I think that that's really critical to the success of Salve graduates. One of the things that we talk about consistently is the success that students at Salve have in sort of gaining employment upon graduation. I think part of the reason for that is because the faculty they're working with in the classrooms really understand the world, not just theoretically, but the practical applications of what's being learned in the classroom, and can instill that in our students, which I think is a great strength. Gabby, certainly turning to you, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, why you chose Salve, and what your Salve experience was like, and maybe a little bit about what you're doing now.
Thank you for having me, of course. My name's Gabby. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, and I chose Salve actually specifically for their social work department. So I came in to Salve as a social work student. We have a few transfers into our program, but I would like to say like a lot of us come in like as social work, like we know we want to do social work, and just like the like department itself, just coming and like going to other different open houses. Salve's social work department just like was like a step above kind of like the rest of the programs I was looking at. And it really drew me in. And of course, Salve, like the location is at, like you can't beat that. Just like being steps away from the cliff walk right behind you you really can't beat it. Yeah, it's such a beautiful area. Newport, like downtown, you really can't compare to it. So most of what it was the social work department. I will say that I don't know what it was, but every single one of the open houses or accepted students days I came to, it was pouring rain. So I always joke, like, I don't know why I chose Salve, but I just knew it was the right place for me.
And what are you doing now? What happened after graduation for you?
So during my senior year internship, which I'm sure we'll expand more on later, I just like fell in love with the placement I was at and just the population that I was working with. So I currently work with children who've experienced traumas, and I was hired on as a care coordinator, so essentially a case manager for students. I was working with students, but now it's just clients of the agency who have experienced trauma. Children.
And what has that experience been like? I mean, it must take a very special, strong person to be able to find yourself in that environment day to day, addressing people with serious needs, especially children with serious needs. How did the program really give you the tools in order for you to be able to navigate such a complicated world?
Of course. So I will say like probably most of like we always say in like Dr. Montminy Dana's classes, like we're building on our social work toolbox. So really like a lot of the classes and like the like core classes for the major really implement a lot of self-care into each and every class. So it was never like you have to go in and you have to be like this hard person and like you can't let anything get into you. And that's they kind of like did the opposite. It's more like you have to be able to empathize with people to be able to like know what they're going through. So like you can't be that cold, hard person. You have to be able to like relate to them, but also be able to take care of yourself. So self-care was always really emphasized in like each and every class that we took in our social work department, not just like we're going to take a photo, like just sit today and talk about like why it's important in the field. But no, it was implemented in each and every course you have to take. Dr. Montmany, Dana, and the rest of the department are just like very like they'll talk about that often, and just like really they like drill in like the importance of self-care and not wanting to go towards burnout. So that definitely helps, and just like having like little outlets that help you to be able to deal with those things.
I loved your usage of the word empathy, because I think we all can agree that empathy is lacking in today's world, and the world could use a lot more of it. I know when we talk a little bit about our vision statement when we're doing open houses and other activities with prospective students, we talk about turning empathy into action. And sometimes I think people think that that's just something we made up, or or something that we say because it sounds good. But really and truly, the educational experience at Salve is designed to help students discover how to, one, understand empathy and the importance of empathy, but more importantly, how to translate that empathy into actual work and into actual betterment of the world around them. Dr. Montmedy, can you talk a little bit more about the curriculum and the curricular philosophy? Because I think that will further illustrate what we're talking about here.
Sure. And I just want to pick up on something that Gab said about empathy and you know, being prepared to go out and to work in a world that is really complex, with people with complex, you know, issues, and the world has complex problems, and so that self-care is vital. And the last thing we want is for people to you know, you've heard that term, burnout, to just not feel supported in this good work that they're doing. So I think that's critical. I want to say that, you know, one of our the goals of the program is to expose all Salve students to social problems, social issues, and ways to be socially active. So we have a course that is open to all majors, and it's a freshman level course. It's called Social Problems, Analysis by Race, Gender, and Class. And probably a handful of the students that take that class are actually majors. The other social work majors. The other students are undecided. They're from psychology, they're from administration of justice, they're from biology, all different departments. But there's a common theme in that course, and that each of the students goes out and does 28 hours of service work in the agency of their choice. And what we try to do is connect that experience. So, and that's a way to start to develop empathy. So when you're in the classroom, you're learning about social problems. It's all theoretical, it's statistical, it's numbers. But when you actually are out there in the trenches and getting to know somebody and getting to know their stories, you begin to maybe know how to walk a little bit in their shoes, learn that experience, have a little more cultural competence, a little more awareness. And what I have found is that from that class, you know, a lot of students will go on to be majors, but a lot don't. And that's absolutely fine. What they do is they take that learning into their own field as a person in business, as a person in, you know, ADJ, as a person in nursing. And so I feel like from the beginning of the curriculum in social work, our job is to certainly to you know, get our students ready for practice, but it's also a commitment to the community here at Salve to have people on board and understanding about social problems and how each of us in our own field can affect change. So that's a long-winded way to talk about the first course, but it really is a critical course. And so what we've tried to do is, once students are majors, every course has a small component of experiential. So they'll have it in that first course. They take a policy course. There's a piece of, and oftentimes people don't think of social workers affecting policy, but social workers are very much involved in policy. Social workers are very much involved in getting the vote out right now at all kinds of political issues. So in each course, there's a small piece, even if it's a few hours, where students are actually doing, on the ground experiential work that they can begin to, it illuminates the theory in the classroom. So that's what we want. We want that to, happen over the course of 4 years. And then in the junior and senior year, it's intensive, very structured field internship. And that's what Gabby was referencing in her senior year. So we have a total of 660 hours that our students complete in field, which is quite a bit. Our accrediting body, which is the Council on Social Work Education, asks that every school have 400 hours. We've always thought that more is better, just because it gives the students very different experiences. So, for instance, I know, and Gabby can talk more about this, but she worked with victims of domestic violence in her junior year. And so that would be more likely women, and then in her senior year with children. And so what we're hoping is that over those 660 hours, that's in addition to all those small components of experience that the students have on their resume and in their toolbox, the ability to really go out and to make a difference, to go out and practice. They are practice ready. So our students are what are called generalist practitioners. And in social work, we want students to be able to work at different system sizes. We want them to work one-on-one. We want them to be able to work with families. We want them to work in a school setting. We want them to be involved in government. So the program, when you asked me to talk about the curriculum, I get excited because it's really preparing students for any aspect of life. Social workers can be found pretty much everywhere. And so we want our curriculum as a generalist means that we're not turning out specialists. We're turning out people that, maybe they're going to go into a different field than their internship, but they have a core set of skills, values, and knowledge that are going to bode well in that agency. So, so students who go through the program, in addition to having the field intensive component, have courses in policy, as I mentioned. They have courses in human behavior. They have courses in methods of practice. So that's sort of the how-to. I go out and how do I do a home visit? How do I make a phone call? How do I write up an assessment? They do, they have a pretty intensive research class as well. So we really feel like by the time the students leave, about half of our students eventually go on to get a degree, a graduate degree. About half of our students don't. And they are able to find a job as a BSW and really do very, very fine for themselves. Again, maybe half will eventually go off for the MSW. I don't know if you have particulars, because I could go on and on. So,
well, I think you hit on a really important point, which is this idea of transferable skills. I think sometimes when students are looking at college, they have this vision that college is going to be this vocational specialization track. And really, in the ideal world, that's not what college should be doing. The idea of the academic major is to emphasize an area of study, but to bring in these other knowledge areas that inform and support, so that when they graduate, they have that foundational set of skills and knowledge that will allow them a great deal of flexibility and a great deal of transferability of skills. And particularly when we think about, I think your point about not focusing too specifically too early becomes really, really important, because at least in my experience working with social workers in healthcare, they're not always working with the same patient population. They're not always doing the exact same, even, the same facility. And as they move within the system, they have to be adaptable. It's not going to be the same every day. Social work is one of those areas where, boy, if ever there's a career where you're not going to have a rote day in, day out the exact same thing, you never quite know what's going to walk in the door some days. So having that ability to shift and move becomes really important.
Yeah, yeah, I would say. Can I just, I want to say too, that I think it's really important, for our social work majors to really appreciate the liberal arts and to use those in their major. So when the students, for instance, were talking about cultural differences, taking a course on campus about different religions really helps them in their practice to understand, is when they're talking about diversity and understanding different religious practices, just different religions, period. So what we've tried to do is we don't want social work to be, as you say, just sort of this, just skills and just about social work. It has to be integrated. We want students to take courses in human biology. We want courses, we offer workshops on pet therapy and music therapy. So we want our students to really stretch and grow within the community here, because what they're gaining from other classes that are not social work classes really aid and abet them as social workers. They help them to be critical thinkers. I can't say enough about that. That's a really important piece of our program.
Gabby, can you expound a little bit on your classroom experience and what it was like navigating the curriculum? Certainly, you're doing your major course of study, but you're also taking the core, so there is some balance there. But talk a little bit about what you experienced in the classroom and how that prepared you both for your practical experiences and ultimately for transition into the world of work.
So, like I said, I came in as a social work major. So, like Dr. Montmanidino was explaining the social problems class, I took that as a freshman and did the hours of service. And they do a really good job in the curriculum, like taking like a good look at like where you should take each class. So like starting off with social problems and like slowly integrating in more social work classes as you finish the more core classes, and just like really like make sense to go from social problems into social policy into human behavior, and they really core out your schedule so that you can take these like in the right order that they're supposed to be taken, and just like make sense to everyone. And I would say that the professors in the program, Dr. Montmanidino herself, also do like a really good job at just like teaching to the students. It doesn't feel like a lecture. Like you don't feel like you're being talked at when you're in like a social work class. And I can say that about a lot of the other classes in Salve too, but especially in the social work department, you're really included in the class. It's really an immersive environment, and it's not just like a professor sitting at the top of the classroom and lecturing at you and speaking at you the whole time. You're really immersed into the actual experience of being in the classroom, from freshman year up until the day you graduate and walk across the stage. I feel like it's kind of like a cliche to say this, but like the department really does like care about you, and you're not just a number. Like my graduating class, I graduated in 2019, and we were one of the larger classes to go through the social work department, and we had, I believe, 15 of us. So you could be sitting next to like 14 of your close friends, which I would say like my class did a pretty good job at staying connected. But it really was like a great environment to like get my education in, and it's just such a warm and welcoming environment to be like in a social work class at Salve.
So Dr. Montmanidino, you talked a little bit about that. About half of the graduates typically are going the grad school pathway immediately after graduation. The other half are going into a career. Can you talk a little bit more about what career paths are typical for a Salve graduate from the social work program, and also what graduate pathways are available to them?
Sure. So let me just clarify. I would say eventually about 50% go into graduate school. So not 50% of each class. I think that's just an important distinction. And one of the things I always say to the students, is that, of course, we will support whatever they want to do, but they do have a BSW, and there are jobs out there for a BSW. The job for a BSW is very different from an MSW. So I always think it's great to use that degree, practice that degree. Eventually, you'll be an MSW if you choose. And I want you to know how to work, with a BSW. So students who want a job, there's lots of jobs in social work, which is really exciting. So it's one of the top growing positions in the country. And actually, I think the word is getting out on that. This is particular year right now, we have the largest incoming class I think we've ever had. And I think so the word was getting out there that more social workers are needed. Right now, I would say that an entry level position, that's what we call it. And so we have two things. We try to make sure that our students have entry level ability, and if they chose to go to graduate school, that they would be eligible for what's called advanced standing. So generally, graduate school for an MSW is 2 years. If somebody's coming out of a BSW program in good standing, good GPA, letter from the chair of the department, they are eligible to do an MSW program in 1 year versus 2, which is huge. It's a huge savings. But the thinking behind it is the first year of courses from their MSW, they already would have taken at the BSW level. So it would be redundant. Sometimes people don't understand that. Salve does not have a 5th year program right now. The students are always asking us about it. We would love to do it at some point. Larger schools tend to have it because you have to have a larger faculty. But so students upon graduation have this 5-year window in which if they say, geez, I'm going to go out, like for Gabby, for instance, okay, so she graduated in 2019. Gabby could work for up to 4 years before she applied for graduate school. You've got a 5-year window to be eligible for that advanced standing, meaning you're doing it in 1 year versus 2. So that's what a lot of our students do. They'll say, you know what, I eventually want to go to graduate school, but I'd like to get 1 or 2 years under my belt, maybe 3 or 4. I want to practice with different populations. So we have students a lot of our students come in with a real love for children. And so they end up in the field of child welfare. And child welfare can be working for the State Department. It can be doing something like Gabby's doing with terrifically traumatized children, working in a residence. It can be working where I started out in juvenile probation. It can be working in a children's hospital. It can be working in a daycare center, right? It can be doing school social work. So a lot of people are they want to work with kids in some capacity. They might be working with homeless children. That's where a lot of our people that are stepping out of here are walking into entry-level positions in those kinds of fields. There's also a lot of room in the fields of developmental disabilities for people with generalist practice skills. So that would be somebody with an intellectual or a physical disability. There's also a number of our students will go on to work with the elderly and love working with the elderly. So they have experiences when they're here at Salve, and they'll end up in like a long-term care facility, the Rhode Island Veterans Home, some kind of senior center, something like that. So those are entry-level positions. They're very exciting positions too. I mean, there's a little bit of hand-holding when they start, but I think quickly, and Gabby could speak to this, I think quickly people realize that the students are the graduates are very well prepared. And so they take off when they get into these agencies. And I've had a number of agencies say to me over and over and over again, this is like a student. The students that you turn out are students that have practiced for a number of years, or students with a master's degree. They're really, really well prepared. So we have the majority of our students leave here and find work, and that's the way it is. And as I said, then most of my students stay in touch with us, and a couple of years down the road, we'll get in touch and say, I'm thinking about graduate school. And so we are very happy to, I can write a really strong letter for a student who walks, over the stage and then into school, but such a stronger letter when they're actually out there and they've, worked and beyond their internship. So that's the next stage. Is we have kids going to graduate school. And when they go into graduate school, they're probably looking at more clinical kind of work. So they're working as a clinician in a hospital, or they're working as a supervisor in an agency, or they're doing one-to-one counseling, or they're doing family counseling. So it's more clinical than it is sort of at the BSW level. You're doing a lot of supportive work. You're doing a lot of helping people to navigate the environment. And at the graduate level, it's more those clinical skills are fine-tuned, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think it really speaks to the engagement of the practicums on the undergraduate level, and to kind of repeat a theme that we've been hearing is the strong preparation that students are receiving as undergraduates, which provides them with that good foundation, not only for that first job, but to really leapfrog others in the graduate school process and really hit the ground running and not feel like they have to remediate, which I think is really important. Gabby, as we're talking, I'm reminded of many of the organizations and clubs on campus that we have that seem to align pretty closely with some of the types of students that are attracted to the social work major. Can you talk a little bit about what organizations maybe you were involved in as a student, or organizations that some of your friends were that might be particularly attractive to social work majors?
Yeah, of course. So the social work department actually also has a social work club that I was part of for all 4 years while I was at Salve. And also I was the co-president my senior year. So a lot of social work majors will do that club just to become friendlier with like people in their program, just like get advice from the upperclassmen, kind of like mentor the underclassmen a little bit. And so that was a really important part of my time at Salve, especially like in the social work department, just getting to know everyone in there. But there are a lot of clubs on campus that align with it as well. One, I wouldn't necessarily call it a club, but one thing that Salve does, we have, I guess it is a club. It's called Learning Unlimited, and we partner with an agency in the area, and every Thursday night, I believe it is. I'm not sure how they're doing it with COVID right now. I'm not sure if that's running right now, but it was something I was involved with as all 4 years that I was at Salve, and it partners you with an adult with an intellectual disability, and you go through the evening just kind of being, it's similar to kind of like a best buddies situation, and you go through different like life skills classes with them, and then it's usually a 2-hour club, and then you get to spend some time like doing a like activity or just socializing, and it's a really special club, like dear to my heart. I ended up actually working for the agency while I was at Salve, getting my undergrad, and like actually being hired by them to get to work for like an actual job. So that was cool. Really good experience. But I didn't get involved with too many clubs on campus. But I know that there's plenty of time for like any student to get involved. I know a lot of like our friends would do like similar like a Spanish speaking club. I know a few of the girls in my year were in like the Spanish club because they had a different language minor. So that's super helpful as well. But yeah, a lot of just like the service clubs.
Yeah, I know a lot of the students I've worked with that are student ambassadors are very active in Best Buddies and very active in
Yeah.
Special Olympics. The Salve group is really runs Special Olympics Rhode Island when that's held here in Newport every year, at least when we can get together. So I'm always amazed at the dedication that our students seem to have from day one when they arrive on campus, and their commitment to the work that they've embarked on to make the world more harmonious, just, and merciful, if I could pull from our mission statement. Dr. Montemedina, can you talk a little bit about the faculty and what backgrounds your fellow faculty have, and maybe what research areas they may be bringing into the classroom for students for wider understanding?
Okay, yes, I will. But I want to just respond to Gabby and let her know that Learning Unlimited is still going on in spite of COVID. So it's wonderful. And Gabby is a good example of somebody who started off doing that for her 28 hours in her first course and never gave up doing it. So I kudos to Gabby, and there's a lot of students like that. Yeah, so the social work faculty is small but diverse. So we have 2 full-time faculty, myself and Dr. Pisanello. And Dr. Pisanello is really does a lot of her area is mental health, and that's and working with people with anxiety and depression, eating disorders, that sort of field. So mental health, very specific. We have a lot of adjuncts, and we really like that because we bring in our adjuncts because they have such great practice experience. So they're out in the community, they're practicing, and the students thrive on hearing stories about the real world. So we have we have three sort of like full-time adjuncts, if you will. One is a school social worker. And the students are really very, very interested in that. We have a lot of students, as I say, who come in, want to work with kids, and the idea that school social work is interesting. We have another adjunct faculty who works in the juvenile justice system. So works at what is the Rhode Island Juvenile Detention Center. And so she is the school social worker at the detention center. So these are kids who have been adjudicated by the court who are living in detention. We have another faculty member who's done a lot of different things, including probably the top would be working in the areas of substance abuse and gambling abuse. So that person, comes to us with those expertise. Those are our 3 full-time adjuncts, if you will. They're not really full-time, but every semester they work with us. But what I want to say is really important to point out is that's what they're currently doing. And what I want to say is each of them has done so many different things in social work. And whether it be, working in a hospital, working in a nursing home, working in a poverty agency, that's just where they are right now. And so I think it's really important. I'd made the point before about that portability of social work skills. And it's clear through our faculty that, they have this breadth of experience. And that's sort of the beautiful thing about social work. We also offer 1-credit workshops on weekends. And I mentioned we have them in music therapy. We have them in pet therapy. We have them in mediation and nonviolence. We have them on presidential issues. We have them. And so these are all people. We have them on environmental issues. So these are people who are social workers out there. And for one weekend, we have them come in and do a 12-hour training with our students on their area. And so we try to expose the students to all the variety within social work. So, I mean, as I think I mentioned before, you can find social workers everywhere. And if you actually looked at the staff, that we have, even though it's small, we really represent lots of fields of social work. I hope
Well,
that answered your question.
absolutely. We're coming up toward the end of our time together in this chat, and I just want to remind those that are in attendance that if you do have some questions, feel free to put them in the chat box or the Q&A box so we can answer them for you before we close our session this evening. I would just sort of ask lastly first to you, Dr. Montemudena, and then to Gabby to sort of share her experiences and those of her friends. Are there any other anecdotes about, some alumni that are particularly notable in terms of some of the things that they're doing with their degree from Salve?
Sure. Well, I'm thinking of a person who's local, who went to a local high school, then came here to receive his BSW. And he was in a school where there was a suicide, and has started his own agency to make sure, it's called Great for Nate, and started it from the ground up so that he could make sure that every school that he can impact has training, has prevention, so that this horrible thing doesn't happen again. And I think that's amazing, So he's a notable story. I think all the students are notable because they're all doing amazing things. We have another student who, we have a farmer's market here and in Newport, and no one thinks about social workers and farmers markets, but this is a farmers market that's going to make sure that people in Newport that don't have the means are going to get fresh produce. So a social worker involved in that, right? We have a social worker who's brought a music therapy program into a nursing home. Okay. There's just so many different. We have students that leave here and join Mercy Corps, and that's sort of that's open to any students. We've had a couple of students that have decided they wanted to incorporate. It's sort of like a city year where you take a year after graduation, but you would do it under the auspices of the Sisters of Mercy. And so they've worked in impoverished areas, gone away for a year and done that. We've had students that have, a lot of students who are interested in global social work. So have gone to Peru or gone to helped out in Haiti, so we've had all kinds of things. Lots of great things.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at the entrepreneurial spirit of our graduates. When I think about, the Flying Kites orphanages in Africa that were founded by a Salve graduate. The desire that some of our students, you mentioned policy and how some of our students have gone and to DC. Some of our students have gone and worked for the UN. It's really quite fascinating, the breadth of pathways that students can pursue. Gabby, I'm going to save the last word for you. Any particular stories or experiences that you want to share, either from your experiences or from some of your friends and the things that they're doing? And maybe just sort of end with the question of would you choose Salve again and why?
Oh, 100%. I would choose Salve again in a heartbeat. When Dr. Montemudena says there are students who wish that they had a 5-year program, I would say that myself and probably along with every single one of my graduating class was yes, we need a 5-year program. I would have done it in a heartbeat. I'm actually racking my brain, and I'm am I gonna find a graduate program that I'm gonna love just as much as I did with Salve? I think that would probably be my anecdote of what to leave it on would be Salve is such a special, this social work program in general has such a special place in my heart, and always will forever. Just the environment and just how supportive you feel when you're a student there. It really is you're home away from home, just going to school at the Salve social work program. I would say I know you had asked about a few of like my classmates, we have a few students who did go on and complete their 1 year of master's right away and have graduated. We have a few in similar fields as myself, working with kids in some foster care agencies, some therapeutic mentoring. I know one of my classmates is currently working with refugees, which is really interesting. And she has so much great experience to share with us. But one of like my favorite pieces about Salve was the seminar classes that the social work department has. So when you are in your junior year and senior year internships, they really put a lot of emphasis on a class that goes along with your internship, where we're able to kind of learn from each other's experiences and share our experiences in our field placement. So I myself did, like Dr. Montmanidana said earlier, I was working with women and children who were victims of domestic abuse. So I was able to share with my classmates who might have been in a nursing home or any of the other placements that we have talked about a few times throughout here. Same with our senior year, and just be able to learn from, like, did I do that right? Like, what would you guys have done in my situation? Like, just learning from each other was probably the biggest and most important piece about Salve, I think. Probably what I would leave it on.
Well, I think that's a terrific thought to leave it on. Thank you both so much for taking time out of your evening. I know life is very busy for everyone right now as we navigate a very complicated world, and it's so helpful, I know, to prospective students to be able to hear these stories and these experiences as they make decisions on whether or not Salve is the right place to apply. And to those that are listening in either live or on Memorex, probably dating myself with that reference, but I encourage you to get that application for admission in. The November 1st early action and early decision deadlines are coming up. If you can get your application in by November 1st, we can get you a decision by the holidays so that you know and you'll have an admission under your belt and ready to go. You can submit your Common App by November 1st, but if you have supporting documents that need to come later, transcripts, letters of recommendation, things of that nature, that's not a problem. So again, thank you for joining us this evening for this conversation, and I look forward to engaging others and you in conversations again in the future. Everybody have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.